Welcome to the Cook's Domain. Today we're cooking roast beef. Now roast beef is one of those meals that we all love when it's done right. But more often than not it's tough, chewy or overcooked and dry. I believe that if you understand what is going on in the cooking process, you'll cook better every time. So today I have 2 topside joints of beef. I personally don't roast topside or silverside, but it's overwhelmingly the most bought cuts in the UK for roast beef. I bought these at a very popular supermarket, and again, I did this because it is by far the quality of beef that most people are cooking at home. How rare should our roast beef be? Well, so many say that a beef must be cooked rare or medium rare, and they wouldn't eat it any other way. But when was the last time someone ate a beef stew or short ribs or brisket that was rare or medium rare? Would those people not eat that? Well, of course they would, and they would love it, because the cut used in a stew, for example, can't be eaten any other way. They would be too tough and chewy, and they taste better cooked through. Those cuts actually get better cooked all the way through. Obviously, if we're talking about top-end stuff, a roast that I expect to be served at a nice restaurant, then I wholeheartedly agree it should be rare or medium rare. But they're using fore-rib or sirloin, and these are tender, albeit expensive cuts that are supposed to be eaten this way. Because those cuts taste better that way. Those cuts actually taste worse the more you cook them. They go the opposite way and become rubbery and elastic. So this is what this is about, taste. For that reason, I'm going to cook 2 joints. One will be cooked uncovered, direct heat in the oven for the standard 25 minutes per pound plus 20 minutes. Basically trying to get it close to the 58 degrees for a warm medium rare. Then attempting to slice it as thin as possible to make it edible. The other joint I'm going to roast using a different method. One that will cook the joint all the way through, one that will protect what little moisture we have in this lean cut, and then stop in the cooking process just at the point where the joint has softened, is yet tender and juicy. We can then slice a nice big hearty chunk and really enjoy our roast beef. So for this first joint, I'm simply going to season it with salt and black pepper, rub some olive oil all over it. The other joint I've also seasoned with a lot of salt and nothing else. I put it in the fridge, so I did this last night. And salt is a tenderizer. It needs time to work its magic. See, what's happening here is that the salt is drawing the moisture out of the joint. Sounds bad, right? But the salt on that meat then dissolves into those juices that it's drawn out. After a few hours, the salt dissolves into those juices, the drawing process has stopped, and the beef itself over the next few hours sucks that liquid back in. This way, we're seasoning the joint inside, but also the salt starts to cure the meat a little, basically breaking down the beef ever so subtly, making it more tender and juicy for us. Now, of course, we can also do this with this other joint, but that's not what most are doing at home, and it's not what we're being told by the celebs. It's definitely not on the packet. So for this particular cut, this is the one that we've salted for 24 hours. What we're going to do is create a little trivet of vegetables. Take some celery, just cut them into chunks. Take some carrots, again no need to peel, cut those into some chunks. And again, chunks, doesn't have to be anything particularly precise. Some garlic. Now you can do what the celebrity chefs do, which is to just cut down a whole bulb straight down the middle and throw it in. It all depends how much you like garlic and how garlicky you want your gravy to be. I put 3, 4, 5 cloves depending on how big they are, and just drop those straight in. Okay, so put a pan on to a medium-high heat, and this is so that we can sear our joint. We want to get nice brown colouring all around it. Okay, once that's browned nicely, let's turn the heat off, take our beef and put it back onto our wooden board. And the last thing I want to do is just do a little deglaze of the pan, because there's so many good juices in here that we're going to want. So a little bit of red wine, just move it around. And we can take all those juices and just pour them straight into the pan with the vegetables. You don't have to add the red wine into the trivet. That's just my personal preference. I like the flavor that it's going to add to the roast. But if you don't want to do that, just add a quarter cup of water and that'll do the job. Okay, with our beef seared, we just sit it on top of our trivet of vegetables. The other thing you can do, just so I can tell you the other choices you can make, you could have smeared this in mustard after we've seared it. There are those who do it before, but I just think you just make a mess in your pan, and that's, all the mustard just ends up just being in the pan. So I would sear it, and now I'd coat it in some mustard if that's what you want. Other people like to jab some holes in it and push some cloves of garlic in it. It's completely up to you. Put rosemary, put any herbs that you like. Here's where you can change it up and make it your own. The only other addition I would probably add, because this meat is so dry, it's so lean I should say, is probably add some beef dripping to it too. Maybe cut a few pieces and lay it on top so that it will sort of baste, and also put some into the tray. So all that's left to do now is to cover this with foil. Now, we want to make a very tight seal. We want the juices that are going to come out of this and the liquid that we've got in here to come together and steam and cook this roast, keeping it moist. That's what's important. So the foil, when we add it, has to be tightly sealed all around, which is why I prefer to do it with one sheet. So cut a piece that's going to be big enough to wrap right around your entire pan. Okay, so make sure you've got the foil on nice and tight and it's ready for the oven. Now I've set my oven for 160 degrees Celsius and I'm going to cook it for between 3 and 4 hours, and I know that sounds like a lot, but I don't like saying cook for 3 or 4 hours. I just don't think that's the right way to cook, because the shape, the size, the mass of this beef will always be different. Your pan is different, how it conducts heat. Your ovens are all different. There's no way to know by saying 3 hours at such and such that it's going to work. I mean, more often than not, it doesn't. So here's what I recommend: you go on Amazon or somewhere and order a really cheap temperature probe for food. They only cost a few pounds, and then you can spike the food every now and again and see what the internal temperature of that meat is, and because that's when we'll know when it's perfectly cooked. And for this joint, we're looking at a temperature around 80 to 85 degrees. That's way past medium and medium rare, etc. It's going to be cooked all the way through, but I know at that point the meat would have broken down and become really soft and tender, and that's what we're going for with this particular roast. So let's get it in the oven. So for the other piece of beef, what we're going to do, like the instructions say, we've got to sprinkle it with plenty of salt. Okay, black pepper also. And then to coat it with olive oil. There we go, plenty of oil. Let's roll it around in some of this salt and pepper that we've got all over the board. Okay, so in a nice hot pan, a little bit of oil, and obviously we've oiled the beef as well. Let's get it straight into the heat. We want to brown this up nicely. Okay, and when we've got a good sear on it, we can take it off the heat. Okay, and with our beef seared, ready to go, we just want to get the vegetable trivet ready for it too. So just again, chop down some celery. Half a bulb of garlic. Just throw all of those in there. And we take our roast beef, plonk that on top. Now, according to all the experts, this needs no water, no wine, no nothing. We just want to put it straight into the oven, 180 degrees. Okay, so the one I made, my method as it were, that one's finished now. We've hit temperature for it. So what we need to do is rest it. So the first thing I'm going to do is take it out of the tray carefully. And all I'm going to do is loosely cover it with the foil that I used to cook it with. And we want it to stay warm but rested. Now what we have here, on the other hand, are all these wonderful juices, and we want to turn these into a beautiful gravy. Okay, so the other joint is now out of the oven. It doesn't look too bad actually. It looks like it's been well cooked, but what we're going to do now is give it half an hour at least to rest. So I'm just going to take it out and cover it in foil. Okay, so this is the one that I cooked with my method. As you can see, it is cooked all the way through. So, does this make it a bad piece of beef? Now let's cut off a slice. Just a thin one to begin with. Now as you can see, it's a beautiful piece of beef. Is it tender? Well, it just breaks away. Taste test. Wow. Tastes like a really nice, rich beef. But here's the beauty of cooking a beef like this. You don't even need to cut it this thin. And this is not as thin as the other one's going to need. But let's say we wanted a nice, thick slice for our dinner plate. We really want to enjoy our beef. We've got, you know, a nice big hunk of it on our plate. And it doesn't even need very much to break it apart. This beef just falls apart. I mean, you could pull it apart with your fingers. It's that tender. Look at that. It's incredible. And you get a nice big piece of beef. You've got it in your gravy. Absolutely delicious. And let's get a spoon of our gravy on there as well. Now this is the gravy that I made using the juices of this particular roast. Let's cut a little piece off. God, that was like a knife going through butter. And that's butter on a warm day that's been in the sun. That gravy is delicious. Now, this I would absolutely enjoy. Let's see what the other one's like. Let's cut into this and see what we've got. Okay, so that's a far better looking roast. My God, it's very juicy, as you can see. It's dripping with juices. It looks like the perfect roast, just like the one they'd like to put onto the TV. But what's it taste like? First of all, I'm going to do a pretty thick slice, and we'll work our way down from there. But I can tell you, it's nigh on impossible to rip apart. That was extremely difficult. So let's just cut a piece. Strangely enough, it's actually drier than the other one. It's full of juice and yet somehow doesn't taste juicy. I'm going to be accused of over-dramatization, but I do apologise. To me, this is not edible. It was a stick of gum. The outer part isn't too bad, actually. That is edible, and while I was chewing, you could feel those parts coming away, and you know, you can chew through those. The pink stuff, it's just not edible, but this cut is just not supposed to be eaten this way, and that was a most unpleasant experience, I have to say. But let's do what the experts again tell us: cook it, to cut it thinly, to give it the perception of tenderness. Let's get a little piece here with the red stuff, because that's really what we're trying. Okay. Almost choked. All right. It feels more tender than the thick piece. This is like a stick of gum. The flavour's lovely. It's chew, chew, chew. I barely managed to swallow it. For me, no. Let's just see how thin we have to go. It was perceivably more tender than the really thick piece. That, granted. Now you've got to remember that's difficult with a knife like this. That's pretty thin. And they're translucent. Okay. It is perceptively more tender, but it's gone. If I had to put a little piece like that, you know, with a bit of potato and a Brussels sprout or a bit of carrot or whatever while I'm eating, it might as well not be there. I don't think I'd get much out of that. But I guess that's about how razor thin that would need to be for it to be, at least for me, edible. Now, of course, tastes are subjective, and if you like to chew, then I'm sure you like this. But personally, I don't understand why anybody would eat this like this. And I think it's all to do with the nonsense that's been drummed into us about eating beef pink. And I think that's crazy. You eat a cut of beef at the right amount of doneness for that cut. I would never eat sirloin or a fillet steak or a ribeye or prime rib any more than medium rare, because that's the point, that those are delicious. Rare or medium rare, they're perfect. I don't think shin can be eaten anything but fully cooked through, or a brisket, for example, or even a short rib. So the moral of this video is that every cut of meat has its optimal way of cooking. And if your roast beef has to be pink, then you have to buy a fore-rib or a sirloin joint. However, if you're on a budget or have a family to feed, then you'll get far more beef for your money buying a Topside or Silverside cut, as long as you cook it right, and it will be delicious. Many friends and family have called me asking me why their beef came out wrong. It looked delicious, but yet they couldn't chew the damn thing. And it's because they follow the directions of a chef who's cooking either a different cut or is trying to meet your expectations. And my family, they've bought, you know, Topside from a supermarket. Of course, taste is subjective, and if you prefer a pink chewy beef that needs to be cut razor thin, which in itself diminishes the flavour, then by all means keep roasting your Topside this way. But if you're like the countless who just want a delicious tender roast and wonder why your roast is tough, even though it looks perfectly cooked, now you know why. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching.